Okay.
Okay, now go ahead.
So welcome to everybody. It's always a great pleasure meeting you even online. And some of us had the chance to meet earlier this year. We wish to have opportunities for all of us to meet. And I just wanted to remind you that this is the second week. We have one more week, one more opportunity to discuss. And before going into the essential, let's say, part of the session with answers to your questions, I kindly ask the Secretariat, Iro, and Vicky to give us some information, again, reminding us a little bit on the structure and on housekeeping, so that all of us follow the instructions. Thank you.
Welcome from the part of the Secretariat, the facilitation, to the second week of the Asterousia Hybrid University. Just an overview of the meeting structure. This week we have together with us two experts, Ms. Francesca Bampa from UNESCO and Mr. Kandarakis and Mr. Skondras from GWP Med, who we have watched also in the videos that were provided within the week, and of course Professor Skoulos. And like all weeks, we will engage hopefully in a meaningful discussion, starting from your questions that may be very specific or too general. And depending on the questions, all experts, but also you have the possibility to discuss and explore your views. So we are midway in the course of the program. I invite you, if you want to have the camera on. As you know, the meeting is recorded in order for us to share it with the rest of the participants that cannot be online right now. Have your microphone off unless you want to take the floor, and keep the chat box open. Also take a look at the questions that were posted in the Slido using this code. So these are the questions of the second week. So this week we discuss in more depth issues of integrated water management, methods, applications, policies, but also through practices and examples that demonstrate how this can be done in practice in biosphere reserves, but also in other sites of interest. And next week will be the final week when we will focus on education and communication, and also you will be given an assignment in order for you to have the opportunity to bring on all the lessons that we have from this three-week course into a solid paper, let's say, or assignment actually. So this week we saw various management tools applied in the water sector, basically through the lectures and recordings of Professor Skoulos, who also tackled on the WEFE, the Water, Energy, Foods and Ecosystems approach, as well as the source to sea approach and how these connect to the water cycle. We were exposed to specific projects and cases demonstrated in UNESCO designated sites, not only biosphere reserves. And we followed two lectures by Mr. Kandarakis on the theory and practice of effective partnerships applying non-conventional water resources. We had the opportunity to be exposed also to more content coming from phase A, Asterousia. So there were some talks about water management taking place there, and also the group work outcomes of the groups that collaborated on site there. Our group gradually grew this week, so our applications reached 113 from 32 countries, as Professor said, and 50 of them have already logged in and follow content at their own pace, of course, some more slowly, some are already done with the content of the second week, and some of them post questions that are used as starting point for the discussion we will have today. So the people who are here are the good students, we said also the previous time, but I ask you to note in the chat how much you have progressed so far in the course. From 0, if you haven't logged in at all, up to 3 if you have completed all the learnings in the second week. So it's a small poll to see what is going on. A lot of 3s, I see. Yeah. Okay. Good to know, so that we won't repeat things. All right. Yeah, I think I will skip this. I already said that. So I don't know, Professor Skoulas, the floor is yours, and maybe in Francesca's and Nikos, it's in your hands.
But what I propose is, as always, we start for each one. Either I give the initial, let's say, reflection, but then the other two experts may complement the comments. There is a question, if there is still a question or clarification or a comment by the audience. It is you are welcome to make this comment or additional question, and then we move to the other things. So I have in some of the questions, I'm not quite sure if I fully understand the question. I will try, however. I have from Anita what development or human intervention is allowed or not permitted in the core zone of a biosphere reserve. Well, this is something that is described by UNESCO. In the core zone, we have activities related to science, monitoring, some very mild, let's say, interventions of educational nature or presence. I mean, for example, since you asked about Asterousia, we allow, I mean, we have the highest point of the mountain, for those who remember, is in the core. However, we allow for people and with a guide, having always a guide with them, to walk up to the top. We don't consider this as intervention. It's not a development, definitely, but it shows that there is a very limited, actually, number of activities presence there, but we don't want to make the core totally inaccessible and create to the people the feeling that are not actually that this is not for them at all. And even in history, from prehistory up to now, we have people walking, reaching this point, which is the summit actually of the area. So this is what we accept and allow. I don't know if Francesca wants to add something to that.
Thank you, Professor Skoulos. Yes, indeed, you said it correctly, and we have clear technical guidelines on the biosphere reserve, and usually there is a statutory framework that provide descriptions of the zonation. Therefore, you might remember the key word for a core area or core areas, because it might be more than one in one biosphere reserve, is long-term protection for biodiversity. So the main objective is the conservation. And therefore, all the size should be also sufficient in order to meet this objective. And also, I want to add that there might be some activities permitted or not permitted in the core area, and this is usually part of the management policy or the plan. For example, there could be that in the management policy plan, there is a number for a maximum number of tourists that are allowed in the core area each day, or for example, traditional farming techniques that are allowed. Therefore, you need to think about the core area such as a hotspot of high value of biodiversity. But also can be that sometimes those areas, they have small types of ecosystems, and sometimes there are some ecosystems that are created by the people, so that they can also might be considered as core areas. So in the technical guidelines, there is one example about edges in a cultural landscape in the Netherlands, which are considered as providing important habitats for plants and for animals. Therefore, they are considered as biocorridors. I hope I replied.
Yes, fully. And indirectly also, we both mentioned also the cultural heritage there. For example, particularly for Asterousia and the areas that have been included in the core are always a combination of biodiversity and archaeological cultural importance. So the combination is there. Of course, it's not always so clear-cut. There are cases also in our in Asterousia and elsewhere where areas that are we have included core areas of Natura sites there, and because of in the Natura there is more, let's say, they may accept some activities that in principle cannot be accommodated within the UNESCO, I mean, MAB biosphere reserves in the core area. There is a need, and Francesca indirectly mentioned that, there is a need for the management authority to clarify the situation. And this is not always easy. Because the government follows, in many cases, the EU background legislation, while the UNESCO provisions, in some cases, have not been dressed with the same legal provisions. So there are a number of issues there, but these are details. In principle, we have answered both of us, your question. Now, the second question is about how do people perceive the reuse of treated wastewater? Do you have examples, experiences that they didn't want to use it, even in the farms? I ask then Nikos to reply first, and I may add a few things.
Thank you, Professor. Yes, in both in our experience and in our projects we run the recent years, we have come across people that they don't know the value of treated wastewater, and they don't want it near, or they don't want to use it. For example, there are cases in Athens that people don't know about it. They don't want to use it, for example, for agricultural production in Marathon but we have seen cases, for example, in Heraklion, Crete, which was presented by Mr. Kandarakis' video, that people know how to what treated wastewater is. They wanted to use it because it's cheaper compared to fresh water, and they have the infrastructure to do it. Of course, Greece has limited percentage of treated wastewater reuse compared to other countries like Cyprus or Israel, for example, which has a great percentage. Professor, you may correct me here. I believe
Also
that's
Malta, who
Malta.
is with us, yes, has a lot. Yes.
I believe that Israel is almost 60%, if I'm not mistaken, compared to 12% approximately for Greece. Perhaps it's high enough. But yes, people do not know the actual the value of treated wastewater, and they don't. There are significant cases that they do not want it. They do not want to use it.
It is true that in many parts of there is the picture evolves rapidly. A few years ago, only 10 years ago, in many of the Arab countries of the region, the public perception was totally negative. We had to work also with religious leaders in order to clarify that what is the treatment is what in nature is done within few years and in natural systems. And with modern technology, this can be done in a few hours or days. So now there is a bigger understanding of that. We should not, however, beautify what the treatment is. The treatment removes major pollutants and provides a very good quality water. However, in the very, very, very recent research, we have micro or nanograms of metabolites of pharmaceuticals in the sewage. And these are, in most cases, not dangerous. But we are not sure because there are hundreds, if not thousands of them. So the new, so for most agricultural practices, even the water from rivers or natural systems contain these micro or nanopollutants. What we know is that for trees, I mean, if it is going to be used for olive trees or orange or whatever, the final, I mean, the whatever risk is really negligible or zero. If it is going to be used for vegetables that are eaten raw, then we have to be more careful. However, if you consider what happens in the Mediterranean in many countries where they used for years raw sewage to irrigate the farms, What we are talking about is from not Z, from A to Z, perhaps Y or W. So it is, we have to take into account the progress with this kind of water. And definitely water is, I mean, the region is water scarce, and this, I mean, perfectly treated wastewater is possible, and also is the only new source of water for the region. So we need to understand this also as part of the adaptation to climate change, and this is important for everybody to understand. This is all what I wanted to say, and we work as scientists, we do work also to remove also the micro pollutants. The cost might be at the beginning high, but I'm very optimistic that very soon we'll have membranes and other systems that go to a perfect cleaning of waters, even from the micro or nano pollutants.
There are also
yes,
some comments in the chat from Malta that this water, this new water, that farmers complain when they are out of it. So it's very much wanted. It's the other side of the coin. It's very valuable to them. And thank you, Francesca, for sharing these resources. We keep note of all of them.
Also, in Israel, we have the same. Farmers actually fight for that. I mean, they want to use it, and the percentage of cleaning of waters, it's a different thing, cleaning or using in agriculture. In Israel, the reuse, not only for agriculture, for all purposes, if I'm not wrong, exceeds 90%. It is 90-something percent. So practically all water is treated for and reused for the purpose to be reused. We move to the next one, which I don't understand very well. It's anonymous. The manager culture to practice the principles will be extended wisely at the sites where crisis exists, war and catastrophes. If I understand well, is if we continue to use the same principles in conditions in biosphere reserves, I assume, even when we have a crisis or catastrophes in the region, if this is the question, the answer is in principle yes. So we try to, of course, follow the same principles, the same practices in biosphere reserves. Of course, if there is a flooding in the area with waters bringing in polluted water from other areas, we can do nothing. It's or we try to pump it or whatever. But in fact, this is the ad hoc reaction to something that is extraordinary, like a catastrophe or a war. This is the only thing I can say. I don't know if Francesca understands this question differently.
No, not really, actually. I don't have anything to add on this point, Professor Skoulos. Thank you.
Okay. We move to the question of Peter. how can local governments, local authorities, I guess, spread the idea of promoting the biosphere reserves? Perhaps you may start, Francesca, and I can complement it.
Yes, indeed. So usually biosphere reserves have a structure. So the biosphere reserve itself has a site manager that before, during, and after the designations would have already had long discussions with the government itself, but also with all the authorities involved in the area. So therefore, since the very, very early beginning, local authorities and the government have been involved in this dialogue. Therefore, it's up after the designation to keep up to have this dialogue between the biosphere reserve and the local government or the authorities of the area. It depends, because it's always geographically speaking a bit different. It depends how big is the biosphere reserve. If we are thinking about local authorities such as the municipalities, or we are looking at a higher, so-called in European language, NUTS level, or so maybe regionally or even make macro areas. Sometimes we have sites that are covering more countries. So indeed, the dialogue is crucial, and always to show the benefits that activities run by a biosphere reserve bring to the community. That is very, very powerful. Usually, government, they have a MAB committee that is, let's say, keeping an eye on all the, and a MAB focal point that is keeping an eye on all the biosphere reserves in the country, and keeps also a dialogue between, for example, in our case, UNESCO and the community. So for me, what is crucial is a dialogue. And it's always to show the benefits of having activities in the biosphere reserve run involving the community. This would be my message, Professor Skoulos.
Yes, I think you covered it perfectly. I may add something about the different phases, using also the example of Asterousia. In Asterousia, we spend enough time and energy to inform first the local authorities, as Francesca said. This is for the preparation. From the moment that the local authorities are convinced that being part of the biosphere reserve is beneficial for them, then they spread the message to the citizens in their areas. In other cases, and we had that also in some of the original, the first biosphere reserves we had in Olympus, for example, the local authorities were not convinced that this was a beneficial step for them. They wanted to stay out of the biosphere reserve. So in these cases, the local authorities may or may not actually promote the idea of the biosphere reserve. In recent years, we have more and more and more local authorities seeing and appreciating the value of biosphere reserve also for their activities. And even recently, we have an issue for a candidate biosphere reserve of Parnon, the area of Parnon, and we have delayed that because just the opposite. We have many municipalities which wish to be included. So it becomes a super mega area, also difficult sometimes to manage. So now there is a different, let's say, tendency of many local authorities, even without understanding fully the responsibilities that they undertake to be there. So, as Francesca said, dialogue before, during, is very important. And from the moment that the local authority is convinced, they are good allies to promote the idea of a biosphere reserve, also for the citizens, but also for other areas, neighboring or other areas that may wish to be in a biosphere reserve. So the key is the dialogue, the understanding, and the involvement of the local authorities in the activities of the biosphere reserve. Anna Maria has another question. Is integrated water management a topic for academics, university students, scientists, and politicians? How can we make it more relevant to the wider public? Perhaps you start, Nikos, and I may come back and add something.
Yes, Professor. Integrated water resources management, by definition, or at least how they wanted to make it in the beginning, includes not only scientists, politicians, organizations, etc., but as a participatory approach, also includes general public in terms of decision making. So the problem with that is not that IWRM is not suitable for people, is that in many cases, of course, this is changing in the recent years. In many cases, people do not know how to interfere, and be involved in the integrated water resources management processes. For example, there are many cases that governments, municipalities, etc., ask for public discussions in terms of some decisions to be made on water resources, but the participation of people is very limited. So yes, the process is that people, general public, is to be involved in IWRM. Perhaps more steps needs to be made in terms of education, information to the general public, in order to be able to participate and understand the concept of IWRM.
Yes, Nikos said it almost all. What I wanted to say is that if we see how the closest to integrated water resources management within the European Union is the Water Framework Directive, and it has also provisions for public dialogue, public consultations, and the rest. What happened in recent years is that also addressing or implementing the Aarhus Convention, the Convention for Access to Environmental Information, Public Participation, Access to Justice. More and more countries put everything, masses of information for online, let's say, consultation. And this, the result is almost the same as if you don't allow consultation, because you need to have hours to get into things that are not always understood by the wide public. So, in fact, the provisions and the legal provisions in many countries are there, but the way in which this provision is provided to the wide public is not suitable. The format is not always suitable, because the consultation is done during 1 or 2 months through online, approaches. and therefore very few people are able and have the time and energy to get there and provide actually views on that. So what is important, and this is what I understand from Anna Maria, is that when we are talking about integrated water resources management, particularly in a biosphere reserve, then you need to have, if possible, also some physical meetings explaining major, let's say, decisions about water management. For example, you are going to have some artificial lakes, or you want to keep some, or extend or whatever a dam with new methods in order to avoid to have a new one. We had such a case in Alexandroupolis, for example, in Greece. This requires information to the public, making scientific issues easily, comprehensible by everybody. And then the local people may participate, may have objections or whatever. It doesn't matter. What is important is that at the end have an ownership, particularly when the management of water in the area might affect their livelihoods, their cultivations, their possibilities to have more or less water because you need more water for the ecosystem. So this is something that requires a consensus. And for this consensus, of course, this is not only in the hands of experts. So yes, this is we need to, how we make it more relevant to the wider public is what I said. Is not only by putting it in a web page, but making an active, not only a passive, an active approach to the citizens in order to understand the integrated management and participate.
There is a comment also from Isabella in the chat about the monopolizing. I don't know if Professor, you can see it, of water in Italy. I guess she's talking about private companies that manage water, which is an issue that also comes into play, and how much role then the citizens have in the decisions.
Well, I don't have the chat open, but I can say that the issue of if this is an issue of a privatization of water services is well, farmers use public water for their land and pay handsomely. Citizens pay twice in order to have water at home and to buy water bottled in plastic because they don't trust potable water from the tap. Well, this is perhaps a condition, a very unpleasant condition, because the first thing is the price of water. The price of water, water is a public good, but to get it clean and to specific area, to transport it and keep it at good quality, someone has to pay. And you have to pay proportionally, of course, with the amount of water you use and for what purpose you are using the water. Is not, it is an important part of management, of water management, this. And also it is one of the key issues of integrated water resources management is how the different sectors, all different sectors, share water, but also responsibilities about the water. So this is in the heart of integrated water resources management. Sometimes this is done traditionally was done with public money by public authorities and with responsibility for billing and collecting the fees by public authorities. This requires proper metering and having a structure there. In many cases, this was economically disastrous in the sense that the taxpayers at the end of the day had to pay much more even if the prices were lower. So in many cases, they started using the public-private partnerships or something totally, excuse me. Είμαι σε meeting, θα πάρω αργότερα. Or even they had given this to companies with contracts, specific contracts. Our assessment, not only mine, there is a big discussion and survey on that. There are, in all cases, good cases, bad cases, and something in between. In all cases, good management or bad management is not linked with the involvement of the private sector. You have good and bad examples in all cases. In all cases, however, if the public is adequately informed, not only in the use of water, but also in the economics of the water, the situation is much better. This is the only thing I can say at the moment. And of course, in many countries of the region, because our agriculture is irrigated, we use in most of the Mediterranean countries up to 80 and 85% of our water resources for agriculture. Because agriculture is not only an economic activity, but is a social issue in living part of the population in the periphery and having other benefits, social and even environmental, through agriculture. In most cases, the water used in agriculture is subsidized. This creates definite anomalies, but this goes beyond now the scope of this meeting. Not that I don't want to go further on that, but we don't have the time. So we may discuss that also later on or exchange some letters. The next one is by Marvik. The effects of climate change and war, etc., are difficult to calculate before, to predict, I guess. What do you suggest are the most three important actions you would do if you were the prime minister? Well, I will never be a prime minister, but or pretend that I will, but I may say two things on that. And please, both Francesca and Nikos, please also take the floor on that. First of all, the effect of climate change is totally different from the effect of war, because the effect of climate change can be predicted. Perhaps we cannot at the moment predict exactly the time of extreme weather events, but the overall impact of the climate change we know, and we know that also the extreme events are going to become not any longer rare as in the past. The big problem there about calculation or prediction is that we had in the last 30, 40 years, we had a formidable stability of the weather. And these results were actually used for extrapolating, and through this extrapolation, we have tried at least to create the safety valves also for the infrastructures. So now this is not any longer, we don't have any longer, we cannot use all this data of the past in order to predict how we can address the new events. So this is one important element. However, I can tell you that we have not used yet all the tools that exist. We have not used them all. For example, the space technology has not been used enough. And with this, we can predict actually longer term effects. Imagine that we have something like 50,000 satellites around the Earth providing data. Not all these data have used, many of them are used only for security reasons or these kind of things. So there are some hopes here and there that allow us to have better prediction. This cannot be done for the war. So what is the question? Even if you are a prime minister, the first thing is, of course, many of the events we are talking about cannot be controlled at national level. We need to increase the international governance, the global governance for the data that affect the climate change. And this is still, we are back, I mean, we have very limited cooperation there. This is the first thing, to harmonize, but also make available data, because data to become information, there is a big step. And the second big step is information to become knowledge, validate this. And then after having knowledge, it is how best you use this knowledge. And this is wisdom. So we have a long way, but we have to make it short. This is one. The second is the contingency plans. We need to have much stronger contingency plans. So to know that if something gets wrong, we have backup solutions. And the third is definitely, again, education and public awareness to understand actually the situation, our limitations, and our way outs as a society. These are the 3 points, even if I'm not a prime minister, that I may suggest. I don't know if Francesca or Nikos wish to add something.
Thank you, Professor Skoulos. I would briefly reply in UNESCO words that I would suggest, because I don't think that I would never become prime minister, but I would suggest that if I could have an option and if I could have the occasion, I would suggest the prime minister to improve science, education, and culture in the country where he works. So therefore, and the key in order to do this is to have communication in the three spheres. So therefore, he would create knowledge he would educate the people, and he will be able to communicate the climate change in terms of climate change, in terms of the situation where there is a conflict. And it will also allow the people to understand the ethical implications for the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that our two interventions go hand in hand, complementary fully. Nikos.
Professor, I believe I don't have something to add to these two interventions. What I wanted to say is that when you started describing about climate change, that started with extremely stable climate and then started, going worse, that climate change was an issue, or at least a theory that started many years ago. So many people, scientists, and governments at least were informed about what could possibly happen. Of course, contingency planning was not in place, and I believe that we need much time in order to establish contingency planning. And even worse, now that the climate has actually started showing its intentions, if it could have intentions, but how it's going to be. More frequent disasters, more frequent impacts on the population, society, environment, etc. So I believe that yes, contingency planning is one of the most important components that someone, at least a country or a union, should have in place.
Thank you very much, Nikos. It's a big issue. I'm tempted to come back and say more, but I stop here. The only thing I want to say is that unfortunately, in some areas, we have moved to the non-actually reversible stage. And I mention only one, the loss of the cryosphere, the loss of the ice in Antarctica and the ice cap on many mountains and glaciers. This is most improbable that is going to be that they are going to be restored. Anyhow, we need to go to the next one. Can people, citizens, play a role in protecting water resources in or around biosphere reserves or in other protected areas? In which ways can they be effectively engaged in IWRM? Well, we answered this, the IWRM. Citizens have many powerful ways to contribute. Citizens are also consumers, so they consume water, they can economize water, they can accept to pay for water, eventually higher prices that may make other people be more careful, but also they are citizens, they are voters. So they need to vote also on strategies, on strategies of parties or MPs who actually understand and care for water. And definitely in biosphere reserves and other protected areas, there are many management schemes with participatory schemes where citizens may have a say and actually decide or request particular measures and provisions to be in place. But please, Nikos and Francesca, if you have to add to that, it is an important question.
Professor, I believe what you just said and plus the discussion, the response to the previous questions, I believe that covers the subject.
Francesca, you want to say something?
From my side, looking at who is listening to us, I could give you a couple of examples of activities run in some biosphere reserves or some hopeful in the future biosphere reserve that are trying to push to involve citizens in integrated water management. For example, I can see from one of the participants, Martina, that she's working with the students and the teachers in order to make them more aware about the relation with water and more the work on ocean literacy, but also linked to this so-called source to sea approach. For example, we have other participants here from the Po Biosphere Reserve, the middle area of the Po. And I know they work a lot as well with students and citizens to make them aware about what they do as a biosphere reserve, and they have a big engagement of roundtables where representative of citizens are also involved. So I would reply with such really precious examples. So these really questions that would lead to a discussion between them, because there are really good examples here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You mentioned again the importance of awareness and education. This is really a basic, one of the basics. We have another question by Anna Maria. Based on your experience, what makes you hopeful in how IWRM progressed in the last decades? And which IWRM aspect you find most challenging today? Well, I think that IWRM has been accepted gradually as a concept. It is not always implemented in the right way. The most difficult thing is the integration. Integration requires maturity and mechanisms, because integrated means that the Ministry of Agriculture, that has as a scope to produce more and expand more the irrigated areas, understands the concerns of the Ministry of Environment, that the wetlands are actually also in need of more water because of the climate change, and also the Ministry of Households that requires to have good quality, enough water for the cities, for the citizens, and so on and so forth. There is still lack of integration in most countries of the region, particularly, but not only in this region. This is one of the main obstacles. In addressing this, we are promoting now the so-called WEFE nexus, the water, energy, food, ecosystem nexus, because exactly these are the key sectors that need to be, from the very beginning, in the design phase of whatever policy of each one of them with the other three. So this is where I'm hopeful, and already we work on that. We work on that also as a global water partnership, but also under the European Union with the WEST program, the Water Environment Support Program, and others to create the necessary, not knowledge, but also the necessary mechanisms and strategies. And we work on that. We have a second meeting on that very soon in Tunisia in February. So we have that in mind exactly because this is the need, and under the climate change, this need has become clear and not only clear but fully understood by the sectors. So I'm rather optimistic there. Under the need, we have to bring the different sectors together. It will not be easy, but this is the only way out. I don't know if any of the other experts wishes to take the floor on that.
One component I would like to add on that, you said that integration is still at the very early beginning of its concept, so it lacks. We cannot, let's say, implement IWRM at its full potential. What I would like to add here is like when we remove the integration from IWRM, then we have water management. Plus, if we add the component of the changing conditions, not only the climate change, but the change in social condition, environmental condition, political conditions, then all this adds an extra weight on both the water resources and the capacity of IWRM and its scope.
Thank you, Nikos.
From my side,
yes.
Professor Skoulos, 2 words only to also to reply to the last question. So maybe we make it quicker. I think that one of the biggest challenges is that sometimes the stakeholders working on the different areas of water, because it's a huge sphere, they work in silos. So sometimes they look on a single area and they don't look at the big picture. So for example, the so famous so-called source to sea approach that we tried during this hybrid university to touch base. And also within UNESCO, we really are pushing on this concept, both at local level, but also trying to look it from in our region, so from the Southeast Europe and part of the Mediterranean, with a high-level symposium. And with this approach, let the stakeholders that maybe they are facing the same challenge to look together and see what is happening in the source can be an impact from who is working at the sea side, at sea level. So I think that these kind of approaches that really go through the challenge might help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca. You mentioned the source to sea is a very important approach, a very important approach and tool, if I may say, at the same time, which needs to take
You are muted. You are muted.
the upstream and downstream conditions, opportunities, and modalities. I mean, we unfortunately we don't have too much time to get into in-depth discussion on these aspects. Some of them have been analyzed in the videos and in the meeting in Asterousia. It is this is why in what I mentioned before, strategy, we are talking about, actually, we try to combine this, and we are talking about the WIFE, the water, energy, food, ecosystem nexus in the Mediterranean source to sea continuum. So to make sure that the sectoral coordination of WIFE takes into account also the spatial, the space, so, and the specific qualities and conditions of each space, because it is not the same when we are talking about an upstream area where there are some dams or whatever, or to the downstream area where we have a delta. So there are conditions, even when we are talking about the WIFE, that the source to sea elements need to be seriously taken into account in the management. I have a question by Maria Himopoulou on to explain more the geographical circularity of the geographical circularity of the water cycle. Well, the water cycle, as we said, has all the different phases understood, the different seasons. It's different in the different parts of the world, spring and winter may change the water cycle even in the same hemisphere because of the different weather in the climate in the area. But it's also it also depends on where we are in the sphere, in the globe. So, for example, the water cycle starts, if you wish, if we take the input in the Atlantic. So we are talking about young waters in the Atlantic, where fresh water comes from Amazon and the Congo River. And then because the evaporation in this area is less than the precipitation and the runoff, water comes through the south of Africa or south of Americas to the Pacific Ocean, where we have less input than evaporation. So it evaporates there. These changes, these things show that the water cycle plays an important role through the ocean currents to the climate of the Earth. With the change of climate conditions, the currents are affected, and in turn, they affect the climate. So it is a chicken and egg condition there, and this geographical aspect will be one of the most important elements in the change of the climate of our planet. We have already data. We have already alarming data about the change of the Gulf Stream, which regulates the climate in the north of Europe at the moment. Imagine that at the same parallel, you have some minus degrees, -5, 6 in Canada. At the same time, we have +5, 6, or 10 in the United Kingdom. So to give you just one thing, I mean, half a degree of change may change everything. So this this is why the circularity, the geographical circularity, is extremely important of the water cycle. Now we have. I understand also that Francesca will leave in a quarter of an hour, and I see if there are any questions to Francesca. There is one. Is there any idea for follow-up to source to see event, since we talk about of 2023, so to keep participants engaged in exchanging? This was addressed to Francesca.
Yes, thank you, Professor Skoulos. So the source to see approach, we had two events last year. One was more local, so was done with the Italian stakeholders, and is part of a edition of events that happens in the heart of the Dolomites. And yes, I do believe that there will be a third edition. And again, as UNESCO, we will try to bring up to the Dolomites some of the key family for UNESCO. So first year we brought some UNESCO chairs and one at Museum of Water representatives. Second year we brought Biosphere Reserve representatives from the mountain network of Biosphere Reserve. So I hope I can bring a few colleagues this year as well up to discuss together the source to sea approach. So really looking at what is happening in the glaciers, in the Dolomites, but also in the Alps and all the mountain areas in Europe, and also what is happening then in the lagoon, in this case, Venice and its lagoon, that is also another UNESCO designated site. For what is concerning the symposium of the source to sea, we are in dialogue with our colleagues of UNESCO headquarters. So that symposium was organized with, let's say, with the four ends. So not only by the UNESCO Regional Bureau for Europe, but also with colleagues from the WAP. So, every year we have an edition of the World Water Development Report, and this year another edition is coming. It's dedicated to peace. So that is a milestone for us. 22nd of March will be launched, and a few ideas might come also from that edition. That it's also has been also inspired by the symposium. Another key program, international program that was helped us in the symposium is the IOC. And therefore, there is a discussion between IOC and colleagues in Paris from IHP, the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, to how to follow. I don't know if it's going to be again an event or it's going to be a sharing platform or a publication. We have a report that we will be distributing to the participants. And I think that we will be asking a little bit of ideas how to really, because our office would usually implement the programs of UNESCO. So how we can make it more realistic, this management of integrated water. Maybe it's also, we can also think about the future hybrid university if something more concrete can be done in the line of on this approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca. A lot of information. We are quite willing to, as always, to contribute and join resources, and also allow me to mention also this ocean conference that we have in Greece, the global Our Ocean Conference, which takes place in April, followed next year by the UN Ocean Conference in Nice. So there are some opportunities to prepare and present things. Also, we may discuss about a side event during the Our Ocean Conference here in Athens. although there is a big competition about, the spaces and times for that. Let me go back and see. There is a question about the word water days and how we can the anonymous here says we find difficulties to achieve the celebration. Can the WWD be included in the program of educational institutions, educating institutions? Of course it can, but in many countries they try. One of the problems is that we have so many World Days or global days that cover all days of the year, and in some cases we have 2 or 3 in the same day. So it is difficult for educational institutions to homogeneously adopt some of this, but specific schools and the specific localities or regions for whatever reason may actually do that. I cannot think of another answer. Of course, for water people, this is a very important opportunity to work on water education and also inform the public on that. You wanted to say something, Iro, on that? Did you show?
I just saluted Bessie
Yeah.
Sorry, but yeah, I guess in Greece at least it's a good opportunity, and usually schools are looking for such opportunities in order to create some entry points, at least to have a discussion with the students, and they make use of all these types of international days. So I guess it depends on the context of each institution.
Thank you. I move to the to something that may be answered also by Francesca. Can an expert participant who has experience explain to us how they collaborate with the local ambassador? I don't know. I mean, this local ambassador was mentioned somewhere, and also in the dialogue in the work at the last day in Crete. We have very limited experience, at least in Greece, on this. And there are different types of ambassadors in general. There might be persons from the local communities or connected with a management team or others who may represent and present the biosphere reserve to others. And there are other type of celebrities or people who have nothing to do with a specific area that lend their name, their personality to either raise funds or make something, ask for replication or something like that. These are different types of ambassadors. But we, at least in the Greek biosphere reserves, and Asterousia in particular, we don't have any of them. I don't know if Francesca knows about other areas where they have, but this was mentioned by some people, but we don't have it. We don't have any experience on that. We would like to learn.
For me, ambassador can mean many things. So always I think about policy level. So, for example, national commissions for UNESCO, usually Secretary General might be an ambassador. So those are for us the strong ambassadors of the UNESCO family, also the permanent delegations for each country. But local ambassador can be also that every biosphere reserve or every designated site has a own ambassador. So it was not mentioned by me, so I have I'm thinking about possibilities of, for example, we have some figures in UNESCO that are figures of usually known people that can really raise voice. So that could be a figure that we might think. I know that there is also some work around some figures of chefs that are really good, and they want to celebrate the products from a particular area, particular biosphere reserves, and they prepare specific recipes done with the local products in order to celebrate the biosphere reserve. So they could also be seen as ambassadors, I believe.
Yeah.
So yes, there are different way probably to think. We have in UNESCO the list of UNESCO goodwill, we call them ambassadors.
Yeah.
And this is a special, let's say, procedure with a nomination from our Director General. So yes, it's particular. So we have some princesses, we have some high-level scientists. So that could be also another line of ambassadors. So I'm happy to provide you the links to these. So yeah, it can be very different how we want to see it. So for example, United Nations have their own ambassadors itself as well. So such UNESCO has a goodwill ambassadors. Can be that also other agencies, such as, for example, UNICEF, they have. So yes, there could be many interpretations. I'm not aware of ambassadors for Greece.
There are for goodwill, of course, but
okay. I don't know them personally. So
yeah, it's very well-known lady, Mrs. Vardinoiani, and I believe also some other. But this is not what it was meant here about biosphere reserves, which is a different thing. But I'll find out. If I find out, I can communicate that. We have 3 more questions, 2 to Nikos, actually to Alex, and 1 more. So I start with the third, and the last 2 I give it to Nikos. The last is by Lena Fellinger. Do you think monetization of ecosystem and ecosystem services would help create more sense of urgency and action? Wow, this is a very, very complex and difficult thing. In principle, there are 2 things at the same time. And first, there is no real process of monetization of nature in general and ecosystems in general. So we have to understand that this is my personal view, that we are talking about intrinsic values that are difficult and dangerous to put to put a money tag on them. However, and this is the difficulty, however, if we want to promote ecosystem services and maintain and protect the ecosystems, we have to explain to those who understand nothing except money that by using ecosystem services, we earn also money. We economize also. So in this respect, we may make an effort to sum up the benefits and try to say that in comparison, if we don't have it and we need to put a hard structure there, infrastructure there to obtain the same result, the equivalent in money is so and so. So it is not that we put a tag on the ecosystem or on nature, that this, so if you pay this money, you can remove it. No, it is just the opposite. It has an intrinsic value. And because of its presence, we earn money that otherwise is going to be invested for an infrastructure. This is the way I understand, and I try to answer to that. I don't know if this is satisfactory to Lena or not, but if there is a different view or still a question, we can discuss it. Finally, we have two questions originally to Mr. Kandarakis, but to Nikos. The one is, what is the greatest challenge in the collaboration scheme you presented, companies, municipalities, locals, and how do you overcome it? And also, do you think, based on your experience, how the local authorities are in favor of such partnerships in Greece and elsewhere? What about the local society also? I think these two go together, and you can try to answer them in combined.
Correct. Correct. First of all, what is the most challenging in the partnership and the collaboration? It's the balance between, first of all, when you have a project, you know the budget, you know the purpose, you know the what you want to achieve in terms of water replenishment benefits. But when you go to the municipality, first of all, you are facing the challenges they are facing, the multiple problems, the huge amount of resources they require. So what you have to do is to balance the expectations of the municipality, to balance the expectations of the society, balance the expectations and the potential interventions you may achieve. And when you balance this, when you come in line with the municipality, then the majority of the issues, let's say, are not that challenging after that. Not that they don't have their difficulties, but first of all, you need to start somewhere. But in order to start, you need to balance the whole process. What is the response of the municipalities? Yeah, in the majority, yes, they favor such actions. Of course, their expectations is to receive or to receive interventions of higher budgets, or that they are securing, more civilians, more people, but this is something that has to do with the donors. But in general, the municipalities want such actions to be taken on their grounds. The local community, it's something that as GWP Med, we discuss with them before we implement something. Plus that by hearing what the local authorities have to say that represent the local communities, we try our best to include them in the whole process. Plus, not only the technical interventions, all the other activities that include the local communities, which is the education, the awareness raising, the capacity building. So although it's a complex process, it has to do, the most challenging part is the beginning of that. You are muted, Professor.
Thank you very much. What I have to add is that it is not easy. It is something that you need experience. You need to build your own experience as implementer of this kind of projects in order to balance. I mean, it's not easy, and the reaction of the local authority depends entirely on you. It is, yes, it is true that in theory, the local authorities represent the local population, but it's a little bit in theory. There are many stakeholders that might have a different opinion from the local authorities, and you need to somehow create a consensus in advance, so to make sure that whatever intervention is not going to be criticized or rejected by the local community. We have tried many times, we have delayed projects sometimes in order to make sure that the dialogue is real and the exchange of views are there, so that we are not involved in a project that may create risks for us and also for the donor, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure by selecting the project, first of all, you cannot accept whatever a donor may propose, definitely not. So it has to be your project, and then you raise the funds. You find for your project the funds, and your project is built with the community and the local authorities. This is the sequence of a successful project.
Sir, we already we changed projects from the proposal in order to fit the local communities and not the donors per se.
Yes, it's very important and very delicate because you are the intermediate. This is important. Okay, I think we have answered all the questions we had, and I'm very. If there are any further questions or comments from you, please show.
In the meanwhile, Professor Skoulos, I will say goodbye to everybody. I'm really, really sorry, but it's our very busy weeks for our field office. So thank you very much first for having enrolled all the participants. Good luck with the next phase. It's going to be very interesting because it's dedicated to education as for sustainable development. So you will have my colleague that will touch base on this, but it's also very interesting for all the additional lectures. And I want to thank you again, Professor Skoulos and your team for the organization of this hybrid university that is really enriching. And I'm always meeting very new, interesting personalities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Our best regards to the entire team there. Last time we had also one of the old timers,
yes,
Philippe, with us, and this makes this hybrid university, let's say, living and evolving, and this is very important.
Yes,
So
and you
thanks
can
a
be
lot.
all of you. You are local ambassadors. Remember, with your action.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much for that.
Bye, everybody.
In few minutes, we will conclude in any case. Thanks a lot. So let me ask if there is any interventions from the floor. I don't see any. So back to you, Iro.
So thank you, Professor. I promise next week, which will be the final week, we will try to squeeze a response to the question. So to give also to the people that are attending online the chance to have feedback. I think it's going to be also an interesting week, the next week, because many people here are dealing with communication and education, and this has been repeatedly underlined, how valuable it is to connect all what we are doing with the students, with the citizens, and so on. So we're looking forward to the next and final week and seeing you next Friday, hopefully online. We can hear you.
Thank you very much indeed, all. It was for us a great opportunity to see you all and have all your questions actually here. Well, the questions are that make the responses lengthy, because they are very interesting questions and require some explanation.
So keep asking people.
Thank you, Professor Skoulos. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
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 Thank you. Nice weekend.